Well, the reason I have chosen this sequence is because there's a lot to talk about. It determines genre through technical aspects, and it highlights several issues and binary oppositions, which I'll be talking about later on. It's important to the film as a whole because it's the introduction of Marge, who is the leading figure of law in the binary opposition law versus disorder. My sequence starts off with a slow panning shot, which is about 2 minutes long. And when we know that the average shot length in a Hollywood film is about 3 to 4 seconds long, we really see how long this really is. And this removes tension in the audience because it follows a clip full of murders and lots of short shots in the scene before. It also sets location and tells us a little bit more about the character. And through the use of selected focus, it identifies a few selected props which highlight the creativity of the couple. And this adds to the humor because later on in the film we learn that they are quite a boring couple, and then we get creative versus boring, which this is how the use of technical aspects determines genre in a way. Then the pan finishes off with a zoom, which highlights to the audience who the main character is who's being introduced. Throughout the pan, the Fargo soundtrack is constantly playing, and this highlights the importance of the scene, and it also links it into the rest of the film because the Fargo soundtrack only plays at the beginning of the film and at the introduction of this character, highlighting the significance. And it's also a parallel non-diegetic sound because it's a piano and string instrument and it's quite relaxed and the couple is sleeping. And then looking at the mise-en-scène, it's quite soft light in the bedroom, which indicates that it's morning, but it also indicates to the audience that it's quite comfortable and that nothing serious is going to happen. And the close proximity of the couple could indicate their love, but it also identifies to the audience that they're the good couple. The other couple in the film is Jerry and his wife. They're never seen close together, and this might be why the wife is being kidnapped. The body language in the film or in my sequence, is relaxed, which links it to the rest of the film because throughout the film they're always relaxed looking at these murders, which indicates to the audience that the people aren't taking the murders seriously. Now the main active prop in the sequence is the phone. Now the phone in the rest of the film always brings bad news, which again links it to my sequence because the phone call brings bad news here. And through the dialogue we learn that Marge calls herself Marge, and the rest of the men in the film call her Margie. And this could be linked into the sexism, which I'll be talking about later on. Then the use of the two-shot in the kitchen tells us a little bit more about the characters and the mise-en-scène. It tells us what they are wearing, and that Marge is going off to work. She's wearing a formal outfit because she's a policewoman. But it also shows the contrast in color, the harsh blue light outside and the warm green soft light inside. And this could symbolize the harshness and the danger outside, and maybe the safety of inside. Then we get an establishing shot, which is used to set location and also a kind of sense of isolation after the kitchen scene. And this is used throughout the rest of the film as well to indicate whether people are leaving or coming from Brainerd. And then we get a panning shot when she arrives at the crime scene. Now this is long, which again indicates how laid back they are, but it also tells a little bit about the mise-en-scène, what they're wearing. The two main characters, the two police people, are wearing formal uniforms, and also the person who has been killed the night before is wearing a red puffer jacket, which the red color could indicate the death and the blood which has been spilt of the day before, or the previous scene. And we also learn that Marge is pregnant. Then we get an over-the-shoulder shot of Marge walking down the slope, and also we get the opposite of the camera looking back up the slope at the policeman on top of the hill. Now this could symbolize that the men have more power in the film, but this is always challenged, which adds humor because actually Marge is the more intelligent one and she's the female. So through the use of this technical aspect, it kind of gives us a comedy element. Then we get some mid-shots, and this shows the facial expressions and again how laid back they are, and they don't seem to have any shocking expressions on their face. And they're also quite lengthy, which indicates to us as an audience that it could be a day-to-day occurrence, but we know that murders aren't a day-to-day occurrence, so this shows how laid back they are. And then the diegetic sound is always monotonous. It's dialogue throughout the sequence. And the monotone, again, symbolizes how laid back they are. Then moving on to representation, death is a major theme, but we can see that they're not taking this seriously. This is shown through the technical aspects of the long shots. and also that Marge is wearing mittens to a crime scene. This doesn't seem very practical, but yet this shows the audience that they don't seem to be taking this very seriously. And then looking at sexism, this is mainly shown towards Marge. All the male figures call her Margie, which could be seen as disrespectful or degrading in a way. And also when she walks down the slope, she slips, and the guy says, "Watch your step, Margie," as if she can't handle herself. But this is then challenged because she is the clever one. She turns up to the scene and 3 minutes later she's worked out what's happened. Whereas her sidekick, in a way, the person who is helping her, has been there for a while and has warmed himself up. But he hasn't worked out what's happened. And then we get the binary opposition male versus female, which is only one of few, such as Law and Disorder and Rich versus Poor. And the stereotypical man is it's challenged again, that the female is waking up and going to work, and the male is cooking her breakfast. And again, at the crime scene, the male is standing on the safety of the path, whereas the female, who is pregnant, is sliding down this slippery slope to see what's happened. Then moving on to the sidekick. Again, the sidekick is a man helping the woman, who is the main figure, which again could be linked into the male versus female and how it's challenged and that the female has more power here. And he's the typical sidekick. He's useless, he turns up early and he can't figure out what's happened. And that links also into the next scene where they look at the DLR plates. He thinks it's the start of a number plate, whereas actually the female figure, Marge, works out straight away that it's actually short for dealer plates. So these representations are all the stereotypes are challenged, which adds comedy. And this is also highlighted through the technical aspects, which I've just gone through. And then we also have a money issue, which is used in No Country for Old Men, linking the film to another Coen Brothers film. So the target audience is its certificate is 18, which kind of restricts the audience, but it could also make it more appealing to the 18 to 40-year-olds, who are 80% of the viewers. It's probably because there's a lot of death and violence and comedy, satirical comedy. And it's very similar to the audience of A Serious Man and No Country for Old Men. And then I looked at the trailer, and this really highlights the significance of Marge in my sequence. So again, highlighting the significance of my sequence to the film. And because they show her a lot, and she is very vital because she ends up being the hero in the end. And then the words of execution, sex, and kidnapping, again, could appeal to the 18 to 40-year-old males who are watching the film. Now, the genre is black comedy, and this is shown through dialogue, the flippancy towards the deaths, and also the accent. And the challenging of stereotypes highlights the comical factor, which I've just spoken about, and it's very similar to the Coen Brothers' first film, and I think that's why, through the success of that they've gone on to make several black comedies. And this film was Blood Simple, which was produced in 1984, and they used Frances McDormand, who is now typecast this kind of genre. And it links in to A Serious Man, which the Coen Brothers have also produced. And in this film, the main character's life and job falls apart, which is very similar to Jerry. But it also links into No Country for Old Men with the money issue, but also the introduction of the law figure there, the policeman. The pan is also used there, and the pan is quite unusual. Usually you start a scene off with an establishing shot to show the location, whereas here the pan is used to tell you a little bit more about the characters and building it up. And this is not usually seen, but it's also used in another Coen Brothers film in No Country for Old Men. Now looking at the institutional factors, the institutions which produced it were Polygram and the working title, and the cost was $7 million, but it made $24 million in the first year. That's a 250% profit, which is larger than any other Coen Brothers film so far, which highlights its popularity. And they grew up near Minnesota, where this film has been filmed. And it was their first major breakthrough, really, where Frances McDormand won Best Actress. And also the Coen Brothers won Best Writing for Screenplay directly for a screen. And then finally, looking at the narrative structure, it's omniscient. We know more than the characters in the film. We know kind of what's happening, whereas they don't. Then the linear narrative, it's a linear narrative, sorry. It's told chronologically, and it follows Todorow's theory of narrative. It goes from equilibrium right at the start, and then there's disequilibrium mainly throughout the whole film. And then it finally finishes off with equilibrium when Marge captures the villain. So if we look at Vladimir Prop's 8 characters, Then we got the villains here, which are Carl and Gare, and the hero, which is Marge.